Someone probably told you this at some point. A neighbor, a coworker, maybe your brother-in-law at Thanksgiving. Just claim Social Security at 62. If the money isn't enough, pick up some part-time work. And if you happen to earn too much and they hold back a little of your check, don't panic. The government isn't taking it. They'll give every dollar back to you once you hit your full retirement age. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like someone did their homework. And here's the thing, technically, none of that is wrong. The rule they're describing is real. It's written right there in the SSA handbook. The government does adjust your benefit upward later to account for what was withheld. But there's a gap between what the rule says and what it actually does to your life. A gap that doesn't show up until you're staring at a check that's been cut in half, while your mortgage is still due in full. That gap is what we're talking about today. We're also going to look at a second myth that's been circulating in financial planning circles for years. The one where advisors tell you to suspend your benefits at 67 to lock in a guaranteed 8% annual increase. Sounds like a no-brainer, right? Until you realize no one mentioned what you're supposed to live on for the next 3 years. Welcome back to Wes Investor. Today we're going to work through the two biggest mathematical illusions in Social Security. Not theory, not it depends. Actual cash flow, what comes in, what doesn't, and what that costs you in real life. Because the goal here isn't to optimize a spreadsheet. It's to make sure the system you paid into for 35 years actually works for you, not the other way around. Let me tell you about a guy I've seen a version of a dozen times. He's an engineer, retired at 62 after a solid career. Smart guy, done well. He claims Social Security early. Reasonable choice. He needed the income. But after about 6 months at home, the quiet starts to get to him. So he picks up a part-time consulting gig. 25 hours a week, $20 an hour. Nothing crazy. Just enough to stay sharp and pad the account a little. He figures he's fine. He read something online about the earnings limit. He knows the rule exists. What he didn't do was run the actual numbers. A few months in, his Social Security check arrives. It's roughly half of what it was. No warning letter, no phone call. Just a number on a deposit notification that makes no sense until he spends an hour on the SSA website piecing it together. That's when the rule stops being abstract. Here's how the earnings limit actually works. In 2026, if you're collecting Social Security before your full retirement age, the SSA allows you to earn up to $24,480 from work without any penalty. Go above that, and for every $2 you earn over the limit, they withhold $1 from your benefits. So let's say you earn $35,000 this year from part-time work. That puts you $10,520 over the limit. The SSA withholds $5,260 from your Social Security checks. Not a fine, not a fee. Just gone for now. And that for now is where the myth lives. Every financial advisor worth their business card will tell you, don't worry about it. That $5,260 isn't lost. When you reach your full retirement age, 67, the SSA recalculates your benefit upward to credit you for the months they withheld. You get it back. I used to say the same thing. I told people this mechanism was actually pretty fair. A short-term give-up for a long-term bump, that it made the system more humane than people realized. I was wrong. I hadn't sat down and done the break-even math. Here's what the you get it back actually looks like in practice. That $5,260 doesn't come back to you as a lump sum. The SSA spreads it across a small monthly benefit increase starting at age 67. We're talking somewhere in the range of $30 to $40 more per month, depending on your situation. To fully recover $5,260 at $35 extra per month, you're looking at roughly 150 months. That's more than 12 years, which means your break-even age is somewhere around 79 to 82 years old. If you're in excellent health, that math might work out. But a lot of people are not in excellent health at 79. And for anyone whose family history or current medical picture suggests otherwise, that refund is not a refund. It's a loan you may never collect on. The SSA doesn't factor in your health. It doesn't factor in whether you'll be around. The clock starts when you hit 67, and it ticks at the same pace for everyone. So what's actually happening when you earn above $24,480 and collect early? The system is taxing your part-time income at 50% immediately in the year you earn it. Not a marginal rate, not a bracket. 50 cents of every dollar over the limit gets redirected away from your monthly check today while you need it. And the payback takes 12 to 15 years. That's the mechanism. Not a conspiracy, not a design flaw someone forgot to fix. Just an incentive structure that penalizes a very specific behavior, collecting early and earning over the threshold at the same time, in a way that most people don't see coming until it's already happening. You're not wrong for wanting to work. Staying active, keeping income, building some cushion, those are all legitimate goals. But doing it while collecting early, without knowing that penalty structure, means you're handing the government a 50% cut of your labor while waiting over a decade to see any of it again. That's not a trade-off that gets talked about enough. So why does this keep happening? Millions of people claim early, pick up part-time work, and walk straight into the earnings limit penalty every single year. These aren't people who didn't try to do their research. Most of them did. They read articles, watched videos, maybe talked to someone at their bank, and they still got caught. The reason isn't ignorance. It's a specific emotional conflict that the financial system is very good at exploiting. After 35 years of watching Social Security taxes come out of every paycheck, you start hearing news about the trust fund running low. Projections say the reserve could face pressure around 2035. Inflation is eating into purchasing power faster than most people expected. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet belief takes hold. This system is fragile. The money I put in might not be there when I need it. I should take what's mine while I still can. That feeling makes complete sense. You didn't receive a handout. You paid in. For decades. This is your money, not a government favor. And when the system feels unstable, the rational instinct is to pull your claim before something changes. I've watched that instinct drive some very smart, very careful people into decisions they later regretted. Not because they panicked, but because they were responding to a real concern in a way that felt logical. The problem is that urgency and good math rarely show up together. When you claim at 62 because you're afraid the system won't survive, and then you go back to work because the benefit alone isn't enough to cover your actual expenses, you've landed in exactly the position the penalty structure is designed to catch. You're collecting early and earning over the limit at the same time. And now you're paying 50 cents on every dollar over $24,480 while waiting 12 to 15 years to see any of it come back. The fear of losing what's yours pushed you into a mechanism that actually takes more of it. There's also something worth naming here that doesn't come up in most financial content. For a lot of people in this situation, people who spent their careers as the provider, the one who handled the bills and kept the household stable, having to pick up a side gig in retirement doesn't just feel like a financial inconvenience. It feels like something went wrong, like the plan didn't hold. That shame is real. And it makes people less likely to stop and ask questions, because asking questions means admitting they might have made a mistake when they filed. But claiming early wasn't a mistake if you needed the income. It was a decision made with the information you had at the time. The mistake, if there is one, is continuing to work above the earnings limit without understanding what it's actually costing you, month by month, before you ever see a dollar of that refund. Wanting to work more isn't the problem. Wanting to earn more isn't the problem. You're allowed to want both of those things. The problem is using a tool at the wrong time without knowing the penalty built into using it that way. Claiming early and earning over the limit isn't a personal failure. It's a cash flow trap dressed up as flexibility. And the system doesn't exactly go out of its way to explain the fine print before you sign. Now let's talk about the second myth. This one comes from a different place, not from a neighbor's advice or a quick Google search. This one comes from financial advisors, people with credentials, business cards, and a very convincing pitch. The setup goes like this. Maybe you claimed Social Security at 62 and locked in a lower monthly benefit than you'd get at full retirement age. You've been told that's permanent, but then your advisor leans forward and says, actually, there's a way to fix this. When you hit 67, you can file to suspend your benefits. Every year you delay past that point, your monthly payment grows by 8%. Hold out until 70, and you've added 3 years of guaranteed 8% annual increases. No stock market risk, no volatility, just a locked-in return. When I first read about the suspend rule in the SSA handbook, I'll be honest, I got excited. I thought I'd found something. A legitimate mechanism inside the system that could actually help people recover from an early claim. I remember thinking this was the closest thing to a free lunch I'd seen in 20 years of looking at retirement math. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to sit down and look at what happens to your bank account in the 3 years between 67 and 70. Because while the benefit is suspended, the checks stop. Completely. There's no partial payment, no reduced amount. The SSA does not send you anything during the suspension period. Whatever you were receiving before you filed, that number goes to zero the month the suspension takes effect, and it stays there until you turn 70 or file to restart. If your Social Security benefit was $2,500 a month, suspending for 3 years means you walk away from $90,000 in cash flow. Not on paper, not in a hypothetical. $90,000 that does not arrive in your account over those 36 months, and your bills don't suspend with it. The mortgage, the insurance premiums, the prescription costs, the property taxes. None of that pauses while you wait for your 8% reward. That money has to come from somewhere. And for most people who didn't plan specifically for this gap, it comes from their 401k or their IRA, which is where the real cost lies. And it's the part advisors almost never walk you through. Pulling from a retirement account to cover living expenses isn't just a withdrawal. It's a permanent reduction in the base that your future growth compounds on. Every dollar you pull out in your late 60s is a dollar that doesn't grow through your 70s. That loss doesn't show up in the Social Security math. It shows up 5 or 10 years later when the account balance is smaller than it should be, and you can't figure out exactly why. The 8% from the government looks great in isolation. It's when you put it next to what it costs your portfolio that the picture changes. Suspending at FRA is not a bad strategy. For the right person with the right preparation, it can make real sense, especially for a surviving spouse who will benefit from the higher payment for years after. But the right person part matters enormously. If you don't have 3 years of living expenses sitting in cash, short-term treasuries, or CDs, money that is completely separate from your investment accounts, then you are not ready to suspend. What looks like a disciplined financial move becomes a forced liquidation event the moment the market drops and your checking account runs dry. The 8% is real. The cost of getting there is just as real. And most people only hear about one of them. Let's run 2 scenarios. Same person, same Social Security benefit, same retirement account balance. The only difference is what they did before they hit the suspend button. You're 67. You've filed to suspend your Social Security benefit. The 8% annual increase is locked in, and you're planning to restart at 70 with a meaningfully higher monthly check. The plan looks solid on paper. Then the market drops 15% in the first year of your suspension. This isn't a worst-case fantasy. A 15% correction in any given 3-year window is not unusual. It happened in 2022. It happened in 2018. Markets don't schedule their bad years around your retirement date. So here's what that moment actually looks like, depending on how you prepared. Path A. You suspended your benefit without setting aside a separate cash reserve. You assumed your investment portfolio could handle the withdrawals while the SS checks were paused. It's a reasonable assumption. On paper, the math works if the market cooperates. But the market didn't cooperate. It's down 15%, and you still need $2,500 a month to cover your baseline expenses. So you start pulling from your 401k. In a normal year, selling $2,500 worth of investments to generate $2,500 in cash is straightforward. But when your portfolio is down 15%, you have to sell significantly more shares to get the same dollar amount. The shares are worth less. You're selling more of them. And those shares are gone permanently. They won't be there to recover when the market eventually comes back. This is sequence of returns risk. It's not a theory. It's what happens when you're forced to sell in a down market because you have no other source of income. The damage it does to a retirement portfolio in the first few years of retirement is disproportionate, meaning a bad sequence early on can permanently reduce what your account produces for the rest of your life, even if the market fully recovers. The 8% gain from Social Security doesn't offset that. It can't. The two numbers aren't even in the same category. One is a modest monthly income adjustment. The other is a structural wound to your asset base. Path B. You suspended, but you spent the 2 years before your 67th birthday building what I'd call a 3-year bridge. You moved roughly 3 years of living expenses, $90,000 in this case, out of your investment portfolio and into cash, short-term treasuries, or CDs. Boring instruments, low yield, completely liquid. When the market dropped 15%, you didn't touch your 401k. You pulled from the bridge fund. Your investment portfolio sat through the correction intact, recovered when the market came back, and compounded from a healthy base through your 70s. The 8% SS increase arrived at 70 as planned, and your retirement account wasn't quietly bleeding out the whole time. Same strategy, completely different outcome. The difference wasn't intelligence or luck. It was whether the 3-year cash gap was treated as a real planning problem with a real solution, or quietly ignored because the 8% number was too exciting to slow down on. Suspending at FRA without a bridge fund is not a bold financial move. It's transferring risk from your Social Security column to your investment column and hoping the market doesn't notice the timing. Most of the time, it works out until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, the damage isn't just the money you lost in the down year. It's the compounding that never happened on the dollars you were forced to sell. That's the cost that doesn't show up in the advisor's presentation. This isn't about waiting for the perfect strategy. It's about avoiding the two most expensive mistakes in the system, the ones we just walked through. There are two concrete things you can do right now, depending on where you are in this decision. The first one is for anyone who is already collecting Social Security before their full retirement age and considering going back to work. Before you sign anything, before you accept the offer, run the break-even test. Take whatever you expect to earn in the next 12 months. Subtract $24,480. Whatever's left, that's your excess. Divide it by 2. That's the dollar amount the SSA will withhold from your Social Security checks this year. Now ask yourself, am I willing to hand over that amount today and then wait 12 to 15 years to get it back in $30 or $40 monthly increments, with no guarantee I'll be around long enough to collect it all? If the answer is no, you have options. Many part-time consulting arrangements are flexible on hours. Keeping your earned income under $24,480 in 2026, roughly 25 hours a week at $20 an hour, keeps you completely clear of the penalty. That's a conversation worth having with whoever is offering you the work before you assume the terms are fixed. If the income genuinely matters and you need more than $24,480, that's a legitimate choice. Just make it with both eyes open, knowing what the 50% immediate withholding actually costs you over time. The second move is for anyone who is approaching 67 and thinking seriously about suspending their benefit to earn the delayed retirement credits. Don't wait until your 67th birthday to figure out the cash flow problem. Start building the bridge at 64. What that means in practice: identify 3 years of core living expenses. Not your full lifestyle budget, just the non-negotiable floor: housing, utilities, food, insurance, medications. For most people in this audience, that number lands somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000, depending on where you live and what your fixed costs look like. Begin moving that amount gradually over the 3 years before you hit 67 out of your investment portfolio and into instruments that don't lose value when the market drops. Short-term treasury bills, CDs, a high-yield savings account, nothing exotic. The goal is liquidity and capital preservation, not yield. When you suspend at 67, that bridge fund becomes your income for 36 months. Your 401k or IRA stays untouched. Your investment portfolio weathers whatever the market does during those years without being forced to sell at the wrong time. And when you restart at 70 with the higher benefit, you're collecting more each month for the rest of your life, without having sold down your retirement assets to get there. That's the strategy working the way it was designed to work, not because you found a loophole, but because you solved the cash flow problem before it became a crisis. Both of these moves require planning before the decision point, not after. The earnings limit doesn't announce itself. The market correction doesn't schedule around your suspension window. The people who come out of these situations intact are almost always the ones who mapped the gap in advance and put something real in it. Social Security is not a puzzle to solve. It's not a system to beat. It's the financial floor you spent 35 years building, one paycheck at a time. And the two myths we covered today aren't obscure edge cases. They're the default advice circulating in retirement forums, at family dinners, and in some financial planning offices right now. The earnings limit refund is real. The math behind collecting it is brutal. A 50% immediate penalty on your labor with a 12 to 15 year wait to recover. That's not a safety net. That's a cash flow trap that looks like flexibility until the check arrives. The suspend strategy is real too. The 8% annual increase is genuine. But 8% on your Social Security benefit means nothing if you're quietly liquidating your 401k at a loss for 3 years to get there. The number that matters isn't what you gain on one side. It's what you lose on the other. Don't trade the income you need today for a promise that takes a decade to pay out. If you or someone you know has been caught by the earnings limit, maybe you went back to work, the checks got cut, and nobody warned you it would work that way. Share that story in the comments. The more people understand what this actually looks like in real life, the fewer people walk into it blind. And if this kind of math is useful to you, subscribe to Wes Investor. We don't do optimism here. We do numbers. See you in the next one.